Some men fall apart in public. They scream in courtrooms. They beg on doorsteps. They let the whole world watch them break. I've never been that kind of man. When I break, I go still, dead still. The kind of still that scares people who know me a lot more than shouting ever could. Right now, I'm standing outside a storage unit in Tulsa, Oklahoma, watching my own son load a rented truck with furniture that isn't his, while a woman I've never met stands off to the side, scrolling her phone like this is just another Tuesday. My son Cole hasn't looked me in the eye in 11 minutes. I've been counting. Before we go any further, I need you to understand something. I didn't do this to him. He did this to himself. I just stopped pretending I didn't see it. 26 years old. And I caught you every single time, Cole. Every time. And somewhere along the way you decided I always would. The wind's kicking up dust across the gravel lot. Somewhere behind me a semi downshifts on the highway. And the woman by the truck, the one he's been introducing as his business partner, finally looks over at me with an expression like, I'm the unreasonable one here. That's between him and me, she says. Family stuff you don't need to be part of. I didn't answer her. I just watched my son keep loading boxes that belonged to his mother. Welcome back. If you're new here, settle in, because I've got a story for you, and I promise you it's the truth, start to finish. And if there's one thing I've learned about people, it's this: they'll take every ounce of kindness you hand them until the day you finally stop handing it over. Hit that like button, tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight, because I've got a feeling a lot of you are going to see somebody you know in this one. Let me back up, because none of this makes sense unless you understand what got us to that gravel lot. And trust me, it started a lot smaller than you'd think. 4 days before that, I got home from my shift a little after 6. I've run a small commercial plumbing outfit out of Broken Arrow for going on 31 years now. Same red toolbox my father gave me when I started, dented on one corner from a job in '04 I still remember too clearly. I pulled the truck into the driveway of the house on Larkspur Lane, the one Nadine and I bought back when we were 24, and thought we'd fill every bedroom in it. We only filled one, Cole. And the house stayed quieter than either of us ever planned for, especially after Nadine passed. Ovarian cancer. 14 months from the first scan to the funeral. I'm not going to walk you through all of that tonight. Some of you already know that particular grief, and you don't need me describing it back to you. What I will tell you is what it did to my son, and what it did to me, because those two things ended up running in opposite directions, and it took me 3 years to understand just how far apart they drifted. I have a habit I never told anybody about, not even my brother Wade. Some nights, after the house has gone quiet, I go into the room that used to be ours, and I open the cedar chest at the foot of the bed, and I take out Nadine's wedding ring, set inside a small oak box our daughter-in-law would have inherited someday, God willing, and I hold it in my palm for a minute. Don't put it on. Don't do anything with it. Just hold it until it stops feeling like a stone and starts feeling like her hand again. That Monday night, I opened the chest, and the box wasn't there. I stood over that cedar chest for longer than I want to admit, just staring at the empty space where 34 years of my life used to sit. I checked under the folded quilts. I checked the closet. I checked the fireproof lockbox in the garage, even though some part of me, the part that's been ignoring things for 3 years straight, already knew exactly where that ring had gone and exactly who'd taken it. There's only one person who's had a key to that house besides me since Nadine died. I called him. It rang 3 times before he picked up, and I could hear something behind him, an engine, gravel under tires. Hey, Pop, kind of in the middle of something. Cole, where's your mother's ring? Silence. Then that same, too smooth, too fast voice he's used on me since he was 16 and covering for something. What ring? You know exactly what ring. The one from the cedar chest. It's gone. I heard a woman's voice in the background, laughing about something, completely unbothered, like the ground underneath me hadn't just opened up. It's just a ring, Dad. Relax. I needed the capital. You wouldn't help me. So I found another way. It's not like she's using it. My throat went tight. Cole, did you sell your mother's wedding ring? Long pause. I have to go. I'll call you later. And then nothing. Dial tone. I stood in my kitchen holding a phone that had gone dead silent. And I want you to understand something: I have never in my life heard a silence that loud. He didn't hesitate. He didn't even pause to think about what he was admitting to. 9 years old, that boy cried for 2 straight days because he lost the little pocketknife his mother gave him for his birthday down a storm drain on Larkspur Lane. And now, at 26, he'd sold his dead mother's wedding ring and talked about it like he was returning a rental car a day late. I want to tell you this came out of nowhere. It didn't. Nothing like this ever does. If you're waiting for me to say he snapped one day, that's not what happened. What happened was slower than that. Sneakier than that. It happened one excuse at a time, one he's just struggling right now at a time, until 3 years had gone by and I woke up funding a stranger's life and calling it fatherhood. Nadine passed when Cole was 22, right after he finished college. Watching his mother go through 14 months of chemo and surgeries and false hope broke something open in him that never really closed back up. He turned that grief outward, sharp, angry, everything somebody else's fault. I turned mine inward and swallowed it whole, because I was terrified. Terrified that if I made him sit with a single consequence, if I said no to one more thing, I'd lose the only piece of our family that was still breathing. So I didn't say no. Not for 3 years. When he was 23, he asked me to co-sign on a truck loan for a landscaping business he swore he was starting. 6 months later, the truck was repossessed, and I was the one still making payments on a vehicle sitting in some auction lot in Salisaw. I told myself he was just finding his footing. When he was 24, he called from an apartment in Dallas, said he needed $8,000 to get out of a lease before his roommate situation turned dangerous. I wired it that night. Never asked a single follow-up question. Told myself he was just scared, just young. He never once called me on Father's Day, not once in 3 years. I always called him on his birthday. I always sent money when he asked, 200 here, 500 there, and I never once asked where it actually went. Told myself he was just proud, just embarrassed to ask for help outright, just needing time. I'd cook dinner most nights he came by, and he'd sit across from me scrolling that phone the entire meal, giving me one-word answers when I asked how work was going. I'd tell him I loved him before he left. Yeah, you too, he'd say, just that. And I'd tell myself, at least he's still coming around. At least I haven't lost him too. Here's what I understand now, sitting here telling you this, that I didn't understand then. I thought I was being patient. I thought I was being the bigger man, the father who wouldn't abandon his son the way life had already taken his mother from him. But I wasn't being patient. I was being a doormat, and he knew it. He knew I would never say no. He knew I would never make him sit inside a consequence. So somewhere, in those 3 years, without either of us really marking the moment, I stopped being his father in his eyes. I became a resource, a line of credit with a pulse. The first time I ever actually told him no, the real first time in 3 years, was 9 days before that ring disappeared. He'd called asking for $11,000, said a friend of his, this woman named Renee, had a can't-miss opportunity flipping storage units, and he needed capital fast before somebody else grabbed the unit at auction. I did the math while he talked. $11,000. My mortgage that month was $1,400. I can't do it this time, son, I told him. Not with what I've got tucked away for retirement. I wish I could. The reaction was instant. Are you serious right now? I'm dead serious, Cole. You've never once believed in anything I've tried to build. You just want me to fail, so I keep needing you. That's not it at all. He hung up before I could finish the sentence. Didn't call back that night. Didn't call the next day either. I figured he'd cool off, same as always, and in a week he'd act like nothing had happened. I had no idea he was already sitting in that Dallas apartment with his mother's ring in his hand, searching pawn shops on his phone. I had no idea that within 4 days I'd be standing in a shop off 71st Street in Tulsa, staring through a glass case at the only thing on this earth that still smelled, faintly, impossibly, like the woman I buried. Something in me had gone still. Not angry yet. Still, the way water goes still right before it starts to climb toward a boil. I hung up my own phone, set it on the counter, and stood in that quiet kitchen a long time. Then I grabbed my keys. 18 miles from Larkspur Lane to that stretch of 71st Street where every third storefront is either a check-cashing place or a pawn shop. I drove it in silence. No radio, just the diesel rattle of my truck and my own heartbeat, loud in my ears. You'd think a man driving toward that kind of truth would have 100 thoughts running at once. I didn't. My mind had gone somewhere strange and calm, the way I imagine the air goes still right before a storm makes landfall. I thought about the night I proposed to Nadine on the tailgate of my father's old Ford, out past the Arkansas River, so nervous the ring box was shaking worse than it was 3 days ago in that cedar chest. I thought about the day of her diagnosis, how she squeezed my hand in that waiting room and said, "Well, at least we've got each other," like she was the one comforting me. I thought about the promise I made her, unspoken, the day we buried her, that I'd hold what was left of this family together, that I'd raise our son right, even without her here to help me do it. Some promises you keep by giving everything you've got. Some promises, I was about to learn, you keep by finally taking something back. The shop was called Sooner Gold and Loan. Bars on the windows, a ceiling fan clicking overhead that hadn't been oiled in years. The man behind the counter introduced himself as Dale. I walked the length of the jewelry case and my knees actually went weak. There it was. Nadine's ring, sitting under fluorescent light next to a row of pawned guitars. "That ring right there," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Where'd you get it?" "Young fella brought it in 2 days ago," Dale said. "Said it belonged to his grandmother. Gave him $450 for it. $450. A ring I'd had custom set in 1994. 3 months of overtime, traded for a fraction of a storage unit down payment. "That's my late wife's wedding ring," I told him. "My son took it out of our house." Dale's face changed. He pulled an intake log and a photocopy of Cole's driver's license without me even asking. "Look, man," he said. He had valid ID, signed a statement of ownership. "I can hold it in my safe. I don't want to be the guy who profits off something like this. But under Oklahoma law, if it's stolen, I've got to report it, and you're going to need proof of ownership before anybody can issue a hold." "I've got the original appraisal and the receipt," I said. "It's in a lockbox at my house." "Bring it," Dale said, "and I'll call it in." I drove back with the paperwork 40 minutes later. The officer who showed up introduced himself as Detective Marcus Whitfield. Mid-50s, quiet eyes, the kind of man who's heard every version of every family falling apart there is and still somehow manages to sound like he means it when he says he's sorry. He cross-referenced the appraisal, matched the stone and the inscription inside the band, and filled out an evidence hold. Then he set his pen down, folded his hands on the counter, and looked at me the way you look at a man you're about to ask something hard. "Mr. Bennett, I've got to ask you something, and I need you to really sit with it before you answer. This is felony theft. Pawn fraud, too, since he used a false statement of ownership. Combined value puts it over the line, not a slap on the wrist. A felony on a 26-year-old's record, for good. Are you sure this is what you want? Because once I file this, there's no taking it back." Whitfield studied me for a second, the way a man studies somebody he's watched make this exact decision maybe a dozen times in his career, and it's never gotten easier to witness. "All right," he said. "I'll get the paperwork moving. You said he'll be at that storage lot Thursday? We'll have somebody out there." He looked at me like I might be the villain of this story, the father who's supposed to protect his son no matter what that son does to deserve otherwise. But here's what nobody standing in that pawn shop understood. I had been protecting him for 3 straight years. And every bit of that protection had built a son who genuinely believed consequences were something that happened to other, lesser people. I didn't want to punish him. I wanted to save him, and I was finally starting to understand that sometimes the only way left to save somebody is to let them fall hard enough to feel the ground. Dale sealed the ring in a small padded envelope while the report finished. When Whitfield handed it back to me, I held it a moment before slipping it into my jacket pocket, right over my heart, the same place I'd carried her rosary the day we buried her. I drove home with the window cracked, that dry Oklahoma wind finally starting to feel like spring instead of winter. Somewhere on the drive, at a red light on Memorial, I made the mistake, or maybe it wasn't a mistake, maybe some part of me needed to see it, of opening his girlfriend's Instagram. There they were, Cole and Renee, standing in front of a rented U-Haul, captioned "Building Something Real." Finally, no more waiting around for people who don't believe in us. While I was driving home with his dead mother's ring sitting against my chest, My son was 3 miles away posting about building something real with money he'd made breaking mine. I didn't feel guilty looking at it. I didn't feel a shred of doubt. I felt something closer to relief, like I'd been carrying a hot coal in my bare hand for 3 years, telling myself the burn wasn't that bad, and I'd finally let it drop. I got home a little after 7. Went upstairs, opened the cedar chest, set the oak box back exactly where it belonged. Closed the lid slow, the way you close a door on a room you don't plan on walking back into for a while. Then I went down, made myself a plate, and sat at that kitchen table alone. Thursday, 3 days out, he'd be at that storage lot with Renee, thinking he'd gotten away with something clean. He had no idea what was waiting for him in that gravel parking lot. If you've stuck around this long, drop a comment. Let me know if you've got a coal in your own life. And hit that like button while you're at it. Thursday came slow, the kind of slow where the clock seems to be dragging its heels on purpose. Around 1 in the afternoon, Whitfield sent a text. Storage lot, Unit 214, off Memorial. We'll be in position by 2. I didn't go out there to gloat, and I didn't go to yell. Some of you might think I should have stayed home, let the department handle it without me standing there. But I needed to see it. I needed to stand in that lot and prove to myself that when he looked for me to step in front of the consequences one more time, I wasn't going to do it. I parked across the row and stood by my truck, watching him and Renee haul boxes and furniture out of a rented unit into a U-Haul, laughing about something, completely at ease. Then 2 officers came around the corner of the storage building. Cole Bennett? Yeah, that's still smiling, still not understanding. You're under arrest for felony theft and pawn fraud. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back. The shift on his face was instant. Confusion, then something closer to panic. Renee started shouting that this was harassment, that they had every right to be here. And as the cuffs clicked shut, Cole finally looked across the lot and found me standing by my truck. Dad, tell them this is a mistake. Tell them. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. I just stood there with my hands in my pockets and watched them walk him to the car. I watched until the door shut. He called that night. One aloud call from county, and of course it was to me. I almost didn't answer. Watched the screen ring, his contact photo, a picture from 3 Thanksgivings back, when he still looked at me like he meant it. I picked up on the 4th ring. Dad. His voice cracked instantly. Dad, oh my God. You have to come get me. They're saying it's a felony. You have to tell them you gave me permission. I can't do that, Cole. A beat, then sharper. What do you mean you can't? I'm your son. You're right, I said. You are my son, and I have failed you. I heard him catch his breath like he thought this was the turn, the part where I always softened. For 3 years, I said. I let you treat me like an ATM with a heartbeat. I let you take from me, and never once asked for anything back. I let you disrespect your mother's memory. And I told myself I was being a good father by staying quiet about it. But I wasn't. I was a coward. I was so scared of losing you that I forgot to actually raise you. Dad, please, you don't understand. If this stays on my record, I lose everything. I'm not bailing you out, son. My voice didn't shake. 3 years of swallowing everything, and in that one moment, it didn't shake at all. I'm not calling a lawyer. You're going to sit in that cell and think about what you did, and when you get out, you're going to face what comes next. You're supposed to protect me. No, Cole. I'm a father who finally loves you enough to let you fail. I hung up. I sat there a long time after, staring at the phone. I thought about Nadine, what she'd say if she could see any of this. I knew she'd be heartbroken, but she'd understand too, because she was the one who taught me, long before any of this, that love without limits isn't love. It's enabling, wearing a nicer name. I had loved our son into becoming a stranger his own mother wouldn't recognize. The consequences stacked up fast once a man finally stopped standing in front of them. Cole spent 2 nights in county before bail got set. I didn't post it. Renee's father did, a man I'd never met and never will. The landscaping license he'd been trying to get approved got flagged the moment the arrest hit the county docket. The lease on that storage unit, which turned out to belong to an elderly widow he'd talked into a fake estate liquidation partnership, got voided the same week, and she filed her own separate report. Renee stopped answering his calls within 5 days. Turned out the storage flipping business had been mostly his money and mostly her name on the paperwork. In the weeks after, I did the work I should have done years earlier. I pulled my name off the truck loan I'd been quietly covering. I closed the joint account I never should have opened with him in the first place. The bleeding that had been draining me for 3 years finally stopped. Then, on a Sunday afternoon, he came to the house. I saw him through the front window before he made it up the driveway, wearing the same gray hoodie he'd worn to his mother's funeral. He tried his key at the door. I watched his face when the deadbolt didn't turn. I'd changed the locks that Friday. He knocked. I opened the door and stepped out onto the porch. Beside me sat one duffel bag, packed, zipped shut. "What is this?" he asked, his voice already trembling. "Your things. All of them." His face crumpled. "Dad, I have nowhere to go. I have nothing left." This is the part where the old me would have broken. Where I would have said, "Come inside. Let's talk. Let's figure it out. I'll always be here no matter what." I said some version of that sentence for 3 straight years, and every single time, I taught him a little more that nothing he did would ever actually cost him anything. "Not this time. You've got exactly what you wanted," I told him. "No father telling you what to do. No rules. No expectations. You're finally free. Isn't that what you called me? Controlling? Well, nobody's controlling you now." "That's not fair," he said. "Fair," I said, keeping my voice level, "is you selling your mother's wedding ring to chase a storage unit scam some woman talked you into. You told me it was just jewelry. Well, this is just a house. Go build the life you keep telling everyone you're building. You're on your own now." He stood there a long moment, mouth open, waiting for me to take it back. I'd taken it back for 3 years. Every ultimatum, every line drawn in sand that washed away the second he raised his voice. I didn't take it back this time. I picked up the duffel bag and set it down at his feet. Then I stepped back inside, closed the door, and turned the deadbolt. I didn't watch him walk down the driveway. I didn't need to. I'd spent 3 years watching him walk all over me. I figured I'd earned the right not to watch this particular part. That evening, I made myself dinner, really made it, not something reheated standing over the sink. Grilled a couple of pork chops on the little back porch grill, the way Nadine used to do every Labor Day. Sat outside and ate slow, listening to the neighborhood settle into evening, somebody's sprinkler running 2 yards over, a dog barking at nothing in particular. After, I went upstairs, opened the cedar chest, and took out the oak box. Sat on the edge of the bed and held it in both hands the way I used to, before any of this, before a pawned ring and a storage lot full of strangers watching my son get walked to a squad car. I want to tell you something I found out about 3 weeks later, because I know some of you are going to ask, same as folks always do. The court date came in September. Cole pled down to a lesser charge, restitution and probation instead of prison time, largely because Whitfield spoke to the DA about the circumstances and because it was a first offense. He still carries that record. It's not going anywhere. And about 2 months after that, on a Tuesday, I wasn't expecting, he showed up at my door again. No duffel bag this time. Just him, thinner, quieter, asking if he could mow the lawn like he used to when he was 15, not for money, just to have a reason to be there a while. I let him. We didn't talk about the ring. We didn't talk about the storage lot. We just worked in the yard until the sun went down, and when he left, he hugged me for the first time in 3 years, and he said, "I'm sorry, Dad," in a voice that finally sounded like his own again, not the voice he used when he wanted something. I don't know yet if that's the beginning of something real or just another season that'll pass, but I know this much. It's the first time in 3 years he's shown up at my door with nothing to ask for. I opened the lid of that oak box that night, same as always. The ring caught the last of the evening light through the window, same as it always had. I spent 3 years trying to hold on to a son who didn't want to be held the way I was holding him. I told myself if I gave him everything, every excuse, every dollar, every second chance, he'd stay close, he'd love me back the way I loved him. But he didn't stay close, he took. And when he finally took the one thing in that house I couldn't replace, I understood something I should have understood a long time ago. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's a hostage situation wearing a kinder word, and I was done being the hostage. I closed the box gently, set it back in the chest, closed the lid. I didn't feel angry sitting there. I didn't feel triumphant either. This was never about winning anything. I just felt quiet. Still, the kind of still you only get once you finally set down something heavy you'd been carrying so long you forgot it even had a weight to it. He sold his mother's wedding ring for a storage unit hustle that fell apart in 4 days. He got a record that'll follow him the rest of his life. And me? I got my son back, mowing my lawn on a Tuesday afternoon for no reason at all except that he wanted to be there. That's more than I had 3 years ago, and for now, that's enough. If this story meant something to you, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and tell me in the comments where are you watching from tonight.